Hello again. This is the second video on case law related to carriage of goods by the sea, primarily focused on Hague-Visby rules. The rules that still happens to kind of dominate, carriage of goods by the sea. We're focusing on the aspect of seaworthiness. Now, this resulted in so much of friction and contention over the years. Can we take legal action against a ship based on the unseaworthiness of the ship? What is exactly this aspect of seaworthiness? Now, let's focus on this particular issue by taking a look at cases. There's no use of going through the theoretical aspect, but we'll be focusing on a judgment at the end of the video. But let's focus on what does Hague-Visby rule says about the liability of the courier. Literally, Article 3, subsection 1 talks about a very higher liability on the courier, far higher than the Hague rules of 1920s. So with regard to the due diligence of the quality of the courier, that means taking proper care, the courier is not just liable for its own operations, it would be liable for the actions of the subcontractors as well. Maybe the repair of the courier, maybe the upkeep of the courier, maybe with regard to the maintenance of the courier. If the courier has subcontracted some of the work, well, for that also the courier is made liable. So this is a liability that's considered as non-delegable, that means cannot be handed over. So it looks serious, but let's take a look at some of the cases. The first one is Hellenic Dolphin, 1978, a rather recent case. What happened there? Now, there the case stated, when the goods are loaded on board a ship in good condition, but when they look to be damaged upon arrival, there's a prima facie case against the by the cargo owner against the courier. That means a ship. That means on the face of it. Prima facie is not enough to win a case, but it's good enough to begin a case. But of course, here, the courier can escape liability by showing that, the ship was either not unseaworthy or the relevant unseaworthiness had nothing to do with the ship. Perhaps perils at sea, maybe the unexpected weather conditions, the unforeseen, the wave action, all this and that. Sea is still an unpredictable place with the land. So there are so many instances where the ship can be caught off guard. So here what has happened was the seawater was leaking through the seams of the ship, resulting in damage to the cargo. But the court accepted, the right of the ship to prove that the relevant unseaworthiness was not its own fault due to the perils at sea. That means uncontrolled or technically beyond control problems at sea, which has happened due to nature. Next case would be, Joseph Thorley case. Now, can a ship, normally route is, imagine a ship is to sail from, let's say, something like, let's say, Mumbai to Colombo Harbor. Can the ship deviate from the course? Well, if the deviation of course has been done by the ship, and if that particular deviation is for reasons which are not very essential, okay, take me there. And in such a situation, the ship may be liable for damages that may occur during the deviation, maybe in a different route. Now, here what has happened was, the ship deviates its course, ended up in a harbor called Halifax. I think it's Ireland, right? There are the stevedores, that means cranes operators. So the functions of the cranes at that harbor where the ship deviated to result in damage to the good. So as a result, the cargo owner wanted to terminate the contract and the court was ready for it. Court agreed. And there the court said, okay, you deviated, and as a result only this has happened in a different harbor. So for that you have to be liable because this was not the route that you should have taken. And here the court ordered the courier to prove that this damage should have happened had the ship taken the proper course as well. So that's how the law goes. So any deviation makes the carrier be more liable to damages happening during the new course. Next case, the Nelson line. Yeah, this is about an exemption clause. Now here the carrier has a right to set up exemption clauses. Now what the carrier has put here was, in the event there's any damage to the cargo. Now note that word, any damage to the cargo. But if that cargo is covered by an insurance policy, then the ship is not liable. That was the exemption clause. The cargo owner has agreed. So upon the agreement only, frozen meat was, transported. But yeah, due to the unseaworthiness of the ship, that means it was not proper to be used in the carriage of the, the goods. The damage was due to that. But then when the ship tried to utilize the exemption clause as a defense, so, because the exemption clause there is whatever the damage that happened to the good, if that particular damage is possible to be recovered from an insurance policy, then the ship, is not liable. And the court was not ready to accept that kind of a broadly based, rather vague exemption clause. Because you can set up exemption clauses, but that will not prevent the ship from escaping from the liabilities given under the Hague-Visby rules. Under the Hague-Visby rules, for unseaworthiness, the ship is liable. The ship can be held liable. So these kind of exemption clauses will not help. And then let's go for the Sakaramanga stamp, 1908, rather old case. Again, it was a deviation of the rule, but take a look at the story. It was when the ship was en route carrying cargo, there was a distress call from another ship in trouble, in distress. So the ship goes there to help. For that, a ship has complete right to do, no question about it. You have all the right and power given by the law to assist the ship in trouble. But here what the ship did, take a look, was, a little bit more than saving the crew. They wanted to save the ship as well. All they could have done was saving the crew and go on their journey. But here they tried to pull the ship in damage. When they were trying to pull the ship, the ship that was pulling got stuck in a rocky outcrop, and the ship was damaged, so was the goods. Now, this was more than helping a ship in distress, right? Yeah, the court said carrier is liable. You deviated, did something that was not supposed to be done. Had the ship only tried to save the crew of the ship in trouble, and in that process, if the goods were damaged, then for that, the ship would not be liable. But this was more than saving the crew. This was basically to claim money by salvaging a ship in trouble, right? And as a result, when the goods got damaged, the carrier has to be liable. Next one is Kish versus Taylor case, 1921. Yeah, this was, ship was in the mid-sea, the ship was in trouble, right? Then the ship was moved into Halifax due to unseaworthiness. That can happen. So there the court says the court said simply the ship has total power, complete freedom to run for repair in an emergency. There's no liability on the ship for that due to the delayed cargo or the damage to the cargo. None of them would be acceptable. Taken as liabilities of the ship. Ship has a right to repair itself to avoid danger to life and property. So you could do the deviation, right? In a very, very urgent scenario, or to save another ship. That means the lives were in trouble in another ship. But other than that, any deviation from the route may result in ship being in trouble. But generally, remember, ships can do deviation against bad weather. That right is there for a ship. So when there's ship could technically reroute or change course in order to avoid a hurricane or something like that. Yes, for that ship has a right because ship is taking precautionary action for its own safety. Ship can delay departure due to bad weather. Yes, for that ship has a right. Carrier has a right. Okay, let's focus on the perils of the sea, or some people call it perils at the sea. For remember, the perils at the sea, you can't make the carrier liable. Bunch Corporation was Tredax Export 1981 case, a rather recent case, going by the shipping standards. What was that? Take a look at, there was this particular standard form contract, right? the buyer shall give at least 15 days notice of probable readiness of vessel. So that means, the buyer shall inform 15 days ahead that they're ready for accepting the good. But here, in this instance, buyer was not before, actually 5 days late. So they were supposed to inform the ship at least on the 12th of June, so they may have informed on the 17th of June. As a result, the seller, terminated the contract and demanded the damages. And yes, the court stated, yes, the time is essential, is everything in shipping. So once a buyer kind of gives a particular date, the buyer has a right to be there, ready to accept delivery, because a ship cannot delay itself unnecessarily in another harbor. Time is essential. And so there the court, said that in mercantile contracts, not just by sea, but in other ways as well, time is essential. This timing rule is there for the ship carrier as well, but it's more so, much more so towards the buyer, because buyer is on land. He should be ready, to accept delivery without delaying, the functions of the ship. The next case, Hong Kong Fur Shipping Co. versus Kawasaki. Now, what's that? So, seaworthy, and then the reasonably good condition. Take a look at the heading. So then there was this particular ship, it had to face constant repairs, breakdowns and issues. So there, the charterer of the ship, that means a charterer means a person who hires a ship. That means the ship is owned by someone else. The charterer is someone who, the charterer is another entity. So the charterer can hire ships. It normally happens, right, from the ship owner. So there, the charterer cancelled the contract, telling your ship is unseaworthy because there are too many repairs going on during the 24 months, right? So it should be in your contract said that the ship should be in, what you call is seaworthy and reasonably good condition. But there was constant breakdowns, because when you charter a ship, you charter not just a ship, but the captain and the crew as well, right? You don't put your own crew, you basically hire the ship with the captain and the crew. And when the ship was in such a state, there was constant need for repairs, so delays and all that. But there, the court wasn't happy to accept repudiation. Court said this is not a case of unseaworthiness, right? Delays, did not result in the contract having to be ended, right? It did not make the contract performance impossible, did not. So there, the charter can demand damages from the company or the shipping company, or other carrier for perhaps payment reductions, but they have no right to terminate the contract, because unseaworthiness means the journey cannot take place. It's that change, technically that difficult for the ship to do the journey. Just because the repairs are happening, just because there was number of repairs, it does not mean that the ship was unseaworthy. So the determination of the unseaworthiness is always a complaint by one party against a carrier. You can't just, create the charge of unseaworthiness without solid evidence. So just the case of having number of repairs over 24 months does not mean that the ship is not fit. And then Steel versus State Line Steamship 1877 case. Now, what about if the unseaworthiness is due to the negligence of the crew? Now, technically under law, the carrier is liable for the conduct of the captain as well as that of the crew. Now, take a look at the case. There was, this is kind of a bulk carrier, not the modern day carriers, right? Now we have most of the container carriers happening. Even some of the bulk carriers are much more protected. Now, this is a case from the 1907. I think, remember, right? See, case is from 1877, long time ago. So imagine the shipping conditions those days, right? Do not judge by the modern conditions. So there was a porthole. Porthole means it's technically window out to the sea, right? That was not closed. It was kept open by the crew because of the carelessness of the crew. As a result, seawater comes through during the rough weather and some goods got damaged. So the failure was, the crew failing to close the door, close the particular porthole window. Now, can you consider that as the ship is unfit to face perils of the sea? No, it was a window that could have been closed. So the liability was, or wrong was by the crew. But this kind of negligence, right, might not result in what you call as unseaworthiness. It is an action that could have easily been taken and could have prevented what's happening. So that is not a case of unseaworthiness, and cannot be, considered as a scenario that would make the journey impossible to happen. So when the court agrees that the ship is unfit for a journey, instances like this would not be taken. But gross negligence by the captain or crew may be considered as unseaworthy. They say if the crew is not fit for the journey, if the captain is making some very careless decisions, yeah, the career may be liable, but this kind of general negligence would not make the ship become unseaworthy. Next case, McFadden versus Blue Star Line. Take a case at the time of the departure. What is it? So if the ship is considered seaworthy at the time of the departure, that's it. That's a test. On the day that the ship is set to, at the time the ship is set to leave the harbor, at that time, if the ship is seaworthy, that's it. Carrier has done its job, right? There are so much of documentation that the ship has to prove, right? When they enter a harbor, even when they leave a harbor, right? For the harbor master, you have to give this information. So there's testings done. There are procedures of the dry dock checking. There are a lot of things. So when the documentation is fine, that means the ship is seaworthy. Okay. So if that has been the case when the ship left, but later when the ship is in the sea, some unforeseeable event happens and that makes the ship becomes in trouble. Well, you cannot blame the ship there. That's perils at the sea. Only thing is, ship should be fit enough for the planned voyage. Now, it should not be, it's different from voyage to voyage, sea to sea, condition to condition. The cargo may be different, right? So whatever the planned voyage, planned carriage of goods, the ship should be ready. So that determination, the ship or the carrier needs to be made. And that means the ship should be ready to meet the foreseeable perils at the sea. For example, let's say the ship is crossing from South Africa to Argentina, one of the harshest ocean conditions, right, in the Southern Atlantic. Well, the ship going that way has to be completely ready for, to face that kind of very, very difficult seas, about, 60, 70 feet high waves and all that, continuous rolling seas. That's a journey of over 1,000 nautical miles where there's no chance of a harbor nearby. It's not like moving from, let's say, Colombo to Manila, Philippines, right? There are various harbors along the way because we are basically hugging the coast. Now here you're basically crossing the deep ocean. If you do that, the ship should be ready for that. For the contemplated voyage, the ship should be ready. And if that has been the case, okay, that's it. Ship is seaworthy. So whatever some unexpected thing, unplanned thing happens with regard to the condition of the ship in the deep seas, we might call it a reason of perils at sea or perils of the sea. You cannot make the ship liable due to such unforeseeable incidents. But for the foreseeable perils, the ship should be ready. Next one, the Great China Metal Industries Company Limited with Malaysian International Shipping Corporation. We call the Bunga Saroja case, right? Now take a look at here. Yeah, seaworthiness. Now, this topic of seaworthiness, that means is the ship fit to do what it's supposed to do? Is the ship safe enough to do what it's supposed to do? Now, this standard differs, as I said earlier, in the earlier cases. So on the level, on the amount of cargo, the nature of the cargo, the type of the conditions that the ship is set to face. So it's not a general standard. So it should be judged on a case-by-case basis. Technically, on each contract, we have to check the seaworthiness for the upcoming task. For example, let's say, ship sails from, let's say, Colombo to, Calcutta during the height of the northwest monsoon. So we know the rough seas up there. Beyond, Trincomalee at the Bay of Bengal with high seas and all that. So is the ship ready for that? But if the ship sails in the same route, let's say, before October, in May or June, so in the northeast seas, we don't have much of a problem there. Calmer seas. So different conditions. The ship must foresee the threat, challenges, and ship should be ready, right, for that. So, so if the ship is being careless on such a scenario, and as a result the ship gets into trouble, that's not an excuse of having to face perils at the sea. Take a look at seaworthiness must be judged having regard to the conditions the vessel encountered. This estimation the ship has to do before departing. Next one is, okay, what about taking a look at a few modern cases. Eurasian Dream. This results in some very good determination by the Queen's bench in the High Court UK. We'll take a look at the case later, story. So the Paper Traders Company Limited and others. It was a Hyundai Marine Company Limited and others. So what happened here was, it was a career of motor vehicles. I think it happened in the Mediterranean. Sorry, in the Mediterranean, not in the Mediterranean, but in the Arabian Sea, close to UAE. If my memory serves right, the entire ship catches fire, destroying all the cars. So general average, total loss of the ship. So there the court says this. We discuss the case later. Seaworthiness is not an absolute concept. It's relative to the nature of the ship, to the particular voyage, and even to the particular stage of the voyage on which the ship is engaged. So it's not a general standard. It depends on a case-by-case basis. Here, there was a fire on deck and the crew was unable to contain the fire, and that led to the total destruction of the ship. We'll discuss the Eurasian Dream case later at the last, right? Okay, next one is Taiwan and Marine Insurance Limited versus Unison Navigation Group. What happened there? So there was a ship was carrying lumber, that means wood, right? That means logs of wood for timber making purposes, right? There was heavy, ship was listing, that means, ship was taking water, so it was kind of, basically, kind of bending towards one side, right? Listing means that. So then what, was done? So unloading of lumber was done, right? So the listing was happening. There was a port. Port is the front part of the ship. There was a crack, so the water was taking. So the ship decides to kind of remove the load into the sea, right? In order to keep the ship afloat, because the ship was facing a dangerous sinking. But later in the case, it was found that there was a similar damage to the starboard bow of the ship also. And a repair was done just a month before. One month, not just, but just 1 month, just 1 month before. So the cargo owner charged that this particular ship is not seaworthy, and they violated the rule of due diligence. So they had a similar incident earlier also. The proper maintenance and the care has not been taken, because this is the second time over in 1 month. So that's serious. So the court considered that the ship is unseaworthy and the carrier was made liable. Because if it has been one instance, yes, carrier may have escaped liabilities, but this has happened twice within a very short time, and both of them are very dangerous, minus points, right? Cracking the bow, either front and the back, is very serious things within a limited time. So Zeehyke, Tongue, Tank, Rambler, Cycle and Company. So what is it? It's about the bill of lading. Now there are 3 bills of lading, mind away, right? You prepare, normally the carrier prepares the bill of lading. There's another video on the bill of lading, you can take a look. And so there would be a copy of the bill of lading available with the cargo owner who would be getting the cargo. There will be one given to the shipper who will be sending the cargo, and that there will be one left with the shipping company, the carrier. So when one of these bills get activated, right, that's it. The contract done, the deal done. The other two bills are basically become redundant or inactive and useless. Means you have to forget about it, right? One of these bills needed to be activated in order to deliver the cargo. Ideally, what happens is a cargo owner comes with the bill when the ship comes to the harbor, hands it over to the captain, and accepts the delivery of the goods. That's it. But it doesn't have to be cargo owner's bill. Right? It could be any of those two bills as well. When it's done, that's it. Right? Sometimes, the shipper has the right to recall the goods. Shipper can demand the goods back. Okay, turn back, come back, give me the goods. That's possible. Or the courier can sometimes impound. If the shipper courier is not getting payment from the shipper or the cargo owner, the courier can decide not to hand over the cargo and keep the goods with himself. He has a bill of lading to activate that. So if one of those bill of lading is activated, that's it. The contract is over. So that's the entire meaning of this particular thing, right? The other two become stale. That means, okay, inactive when one of the bills is activated. Next on Singapore High Court decision of Pan United Shipping Private Limited versus Central Wash Shipping Private Limited. All the case links I will be adding into the video. So in the description of the video, you'll have all the case links, so you can have an understanding by going through the the case records or the case details, the links of which I will be providing. Okay, so take a look at that. It's about the demise. What's the meaning of it? The charterer. So I mean, when I charter a ship, that means from another carrier, right? From a ship owner, who will get the full liability? It depends on the nature of the contract, right? If the carrier gives me the full freedom to utilize the ship, right, without any, restrictions on my part, so then I become the liable party for anything's happening. The charterer would be liable. The carrier would not be liable. But if the carrier takes a degree of power, although they give me the right to charter the ship, then the carrier also may have to share the liability a little bit. Take a look at it. Whether a ship has been demised depends upon whether or not the ship owner has parted with the whole possession and control of the ship. And to this extent, that he has given to the charterer a power and right independent of him and without reference to him to do what he pleases with regard to the captain, the crew, and the management and the employment of the ship, right? So if the charterer gets a full freedom with regard to the crew, the captain, the mannerisms, the journeys, everything, maintenance, then the charterer is liable. Otherwise, the courier may be liable for, the unseaworthiness. If the charterer gets a full right, almost we are hiring a vehicle, right? Like total hire of a vehicle, then the hirer would be liable to issues, right? Not the owner. But if the owner, keeps a degree of right, like insurance and all that, then owner will have to share the liability. That means a career. Then the particular case, as I told you, right, the Eurasian Dream. So take a look at it. It's a little bit detailed. So the decision was given in the Queen's Bench Division, right? Queen's Bench Division is the High Court, a section of the UK High Court. Now take a look at it. Seaworthiness is not an absolute concept. It is relative to the the Eurasian Dream case, the case where the ship with the cask got totally burnt, and because the crew was unable to douse the fires, that one, right? Normally, fire on board a ship is very difficult for the ship to douse. The equipment in the ship is not enough. You need outside support. I think you remember the case of MT New Diamond of Batticaloa last year, and then the Express Pearl of Colombo Harbor, right? Express Pearl was just 2 months ago old ship, very, very new ship. It had its own modern, the protections. It was so-called, one of the most modern of the ships with state-of-the-art firefighting equipment and everything, sensors and you name it, but ship was unable. You can't do it alone. You need the assistance of others, and even with the assistance, ship fires takes immense amount of time to douse. We fought Express Pearl for how many days? Finally, the ship could not be saved. So, I mean, how the case goes on, we'll see on that, whether it was a carelessness of the cargo on board or the shippers by not giving clear details about what's on board the ship, or was it carelessness of the crew? I mean, that means a career. So seaworthiness is not an absolute concept. It's relative to the nature of the ship, to the particular voyage, and even to the particular stage of the voyage on which the ship is engaged, and must be judged by the standards and practices of the industry at the relevant time, at least so long as those standards and practices are reasonable. Yeah. So whether the ship is seaworthy or not is decided on so many levels, right? After looking at very many things. So the condition and the cargo worthiness. The vessels must be in a suitable condition and suitably manned and equipped to meet the ordinary perils, not the strange ones, right? Likely to be encountered while performing the services required of it. So at general fire, yeah, the ship should be ready, but the full blown out fire, I don't think the ship will have enough capacity to handle that. I don't think the ship needs to have that kind of firefighting capacity also, because that's not an ordinary peril, right? This aspect of the duty relates to the following matters: the physical condition of the vessel and its equipment, the competence, efficiency of the master and the crew, the adequacy of the stores and the documentation, right? The vessel must be cargo worthy in the sense that it's in a fit state to receive the specified cargo. Okay, you carry cars, you should be ready to take the cars. And most of these cars may have, a certain amount of gasoline in their tanks, because the car has to be driven out, right, from the harbor, from the ship. Master and the crew. Incompetence or inefficiency of the master and crew may consist of a disabling want of skill or disabling want of knowledge. That means want means lack of, okay? So yes, if it's an incompetent crew or insufficient crew, you need 13, but you have only a couple of them, 5 or 6 of them. The captain is, not qualified or skilled. The second mate is not there, something like that. Yeah, that's incompetence, right? Incompetence is to be distinguished from negligence and may derive from the inherent lack of ability, lack of adequate training or instruction, lack of adequate firefighting training, lack of knowledge about particular vessel or the systems. That could be a very new team, not trained well, a disinclination to perform the job properly. So they're not happy to, because they're scared to do the job properly because of that, right? Physical or mental disability or incapacity, drunkenness, illness. So if this happens, the career will be liable. These are careers issues. Okay, the team is proper and the team makes a mistake like inability to close the porthole window. Well, for that, you can't make the career liable, right? That's crew's negligence. But this kind of poor standard and the quality of the crew might make the career be liable, like in the Eurasian Dream case. And what's a test? How do you find it out, whether the ship is seaworthy or not? The test as to whether the incompetence or inefficiency of the master and crew has rendered the vessel unseaworthy is as follows. So how do we find out the ship is all right? The physical characteristic of the ship is fine, but it has become unseaworthy. If we suspect the master and the crew, then how do we find it out? Would a reasonably prudent owner, knowing the relevant facts, have allowed this vessel to put to sea with this master and the crew, with their state of knowledge, training, and instruction? So, is this particular crew and the captain is of a standard that would be acceptable to the general industry? Right? Would another ship be happy to send this team for this kind of a voyage? So that's a test. If the answer is yes, okay, the career is not liable. If the answer is no, definitely, that's a liability. Okay, so that is a decision of the Eurasian Dream case, the case which we learned earlier. It's about the cars being destroyed by a full fire, right? And then the topic of due diligence, right? The duty of due diligence is an inescapable personal obligation, is not delegable. The courier is fully liable for that. Of course, the courier can hand over this if the charterer take the full responsibility for the ship, the crew, the captain, and everything for a period of time. When you charter a ship, it's for 2 years, 3 years, maybe more. So if you hand over the total powers, as we learned in another case, yeah, then the charterer would be liable. But if not the case, all right, courier would be liable. The courier will therefore be responsible for negligence of those to whom it delegates the due diligence. Maybe repair, maybe maintenance, maybe upkeep, perhaps the captain and the crew. Yeah, courier is liable then. The question is whether unseaworthiness is due to lack of diligence. That means efficiency, quick response, and the quality of the work, right? That's the meaning of diligence. In those who have been implicated by the courier in the work of keeping or making the vessel seaworthy. Such persons are courier's agent whose diligence or lack of it is attributable to the courier. Can you remember the Hague-Visby rule? You know, it's non-delegable. Courier is liable for its own, the failings with regard to the unseaworthiness as well as the work subcontracted by the courier to repair, maintain, or whatever done to the ship. You can't pass the blame. Courier is liable. This principle is relevant in two respects. Number one, the courier under the bills of lading is liable for the want of due diligence. That means lack of due diligence by the owners or the managers. Yes, courier is liable. The courier is liable for the want of due diligence, meaning lack of due diligence, of the master insofar as the courier or the owners or managers have delegated to him their duties as to the seaworthiness. Yeah. So the laws are rather tough, right? When you look at it. But the problem is, when the activation of the laws come, the ships, it's not easy to determine that the ship is unseaworthy. Not easy. It involves a lot of testing and checking. So the chance of a ship being fully held liable is limited, less. Ship can always escape using the escape of what you call as a perils of the sea. That means things beyond our control. Even in the modern cases, right? The instances of a ship being held liable for unseaworthiness is less. So even with regard to the Express Pearl case, right? That may be an instance that we are having a problem with, right? The release of, over 72 tons of plastic noodles, right? It affects hundreds of miles of our coastline for so many years. It will be a problem for the food chain and everything, and the damage to all that, right? We have huge issues. Not easy for us to take direct action against the ship or the courier. We have to fight it over. It's not that we cannot win, but the way of the law of the sea with regard to the carriage of goods still in many ways than few, right, gives more protection to the courier. All right, so this particular video was about the seaworthiness related issues. Catch you in another lesson on similar topics.